Hello, my name's Abigail. I'm 28 years old. My life is kind of a mess right now, but I have some free time to spare and I really need to get things off my mind. So here I am. Let me begin by introducing you to my husband, Chris, and I. We met when we were in college, and the day that we met, I just had this gut feeling that we were meant to be together. We started dating a month after we met, and our relationship got more and more serious until one day, about 2 years after graduating, we decided that we wanted to get married. We invited all of our closest friends and family for our wedding, and we had a blast. Since then, our relationship has only gotten stronger. That being said, the incident I want to talk to you about today is one of the many reasons that we have such a strong relationship. You see, Chris and I are very big on family. We came from tight-knit families, and we both have parents who adore us and still pamper us even though we're adults. Every other weekend, we make the drive to meet our parents, to spend quality time with them. I have one sibling, and once every 2 months we go to visit them or they come over to us. As for Chris, he had a sister. I say had because she was considered the black sheep of the family. She ran away from home when she was 22, and Chris didn't remember much of what happened because the event was traumatic to him. His parents did eventually tell him what happened, but he never really opened up to me about it, and I never pushed because I didn't think it was my place to know. Anyway, one Saturday, Chris got a call from an unknown number while the both of us were enjoying our day. He picked up the call and immediately went stiff. He exited the room and came back after 15 minutes with the widest smile on his face. "You're never going to believe who just called me." "Who?" "Remember how I told you I had a sister?" "Yeah, you lost all contact with her because she ran away and refused to talk to your family, right?" "Yeah." "Well, she called me." "Oh my gosh, what did she say?" "She said that she was in town and asked if she could visit us tomorrow." "That's wonderful. Tell me that you said yes." "Of course I did. My sister and I were very close when I was younger, and then she just disappeared." "Didn't your parents ever tell you what happened?" "Well, apparently my sister was a handful to handle. She lived with my parents until she was 22 and stole from them constantly." "Oh, that's a bit concerning." "Yeah, and she dropped out of college and never found a job, which was why she was stealing. You know, my parents are lovely and very patient, but at some point they just snapped and asked her to move out." "Right, and I can't imagine what your sister must have done to upset them so much that they kicked her out." "I don't remember the specifics of it, but all I remember is that there was a lot of screaming on Ellen's part, and my parents tried their best to be gentle with her." "Ooh, that must have been rough on you too." "Yeah, it sucked not having my best friend around. I tried to get in touch with her so many times, but she just never responded to me. Eventually, I gave up. So trust me when I say that I was beyond shocked to hear her voice on the phone when she called." "I can imagine. I'm so happy you're going to finally be reunited. I hope that everything's going well with her now." "Me too. She told me she has a son, which means that I'm an uncle." "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. How old is he?" "He's 2, and he'll be coming to see us tomorrow with her." "I'm so excited to meet both of them. How about we hit the grocery store and buy some things to cook with for tomorrow?" "Let's go." While I was super happy for Chris to be reunited with his sister, I couldn't entirely ignore the information he had dumped on me about her. I felt like something was going to go wrong at that point, but I decided to just let things play out and figure things out as they came. Chris and I spent the rest of the day prepping for the next day's meal. Chris was so excited, and his excitement rubbed off on me too. When it came time to sleep, both of us were too anxious to fall asleep. But finally the next morning came around, and Ellen was at our door at 10:30 a.m. "Oh my God, Ellen, hi, it's been so long." "How's my baby brother? Give me a hug. I missed you so much." I'm doing great. I missed you too. How are you? And how's the little guy? He's so cute. I'm okay. Life's been a little tough on me, but it is what it is, you know. And little guy's name is Fred. Hi, Fred. Aren't you a cutie? Oh, Ellen, this is my wife, Abigail. You're married? And to such a beautiful woman. Good catch, Chris. I know, right? I tell her every day how lucky I am to have found her. Oh, that's enough. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you, Ellen. Why don't you and the baby come in? You guys have such a beautiful home. Thank you. It took a lot of hard work to get here. I can tell. So, Ellen, what brings you back to town, if you don't mind me asking, that is? Oh, no, it's okay. I'm kind of not in a good place right now. What do you mean? Well, the man I married, Fred's dad, is an alcoholic and very abusive. I couldn't stand living with him anymore, so I ran away with just a few clothes and enough food to last Fred and me for a few days. What? That's horrible. Yeah, well, I came here to ask you for a favor, Chris. Tell me, I'll help you in any way that I can. Do you think both of you could set me up here just for a few months until I can get back on my feet? This is the last place that my husband will come looking for me because he doesn't know where my hometown is. I would love to let you live with me, but this is a decision that Abigail and I must make together. Abigail, what do you say? You don't have to feel obliged to let me stay here. Maybe you could just help me out financially until I find myself a job, and I can take care of myself. I'll live in a motel or something. That's absolute nonsense. I'm not letting you and your child stay in the motel. We have a place here in your family. Of course we'll help you out. Really? Of course. Besides, I'm sure that Chris would love to catch up on all the years he missed out with you. Thank you guys so much. You have no idea how much this means to me. Any time, Ellen. Now, why don't you go wash your hands and meet us at the dinner table for lunch? I was genuinely happy to be able to help Ellen. I couldn't imagine what she must have gone through and how much she must have struggled. So even if there was a nagging thought in my brain to be careful considering her past, I let it go because I wanted to believe that she was a changed person. Boy, was I wrong. The first month that Ellen stayed with us, she essentially lobbed her baby off to us. She barely took care of the child and sometimes even forgot to feed it. I didn't say anything, but Chris and I did take over the childcare duties after that. I arranged and paid for a babysitter for the baby when Chris and I were at work. When we got back home, we took turns making dinner and taking care of the baby. During all of this, Ellen just sat around and watched TV. When we confronted her about her lack of care, she told us that she was stressed and seeing the baby only made her panic because the memories of her husband would flood back into her mind. We believed her and told her that we would help in any capacity that we could. The second month is when the stealing began. Now, Ellen wasn't stealing anything big like money, but it was more so the food and my things. Chris and I like to label our food sometimes when we really want to have something. If there's a label on a Tupperware containing food, then nobody but that person gets to eat it. We explained that to Ellen, but she never cared. She'd eat the food and leave the empty containers in the fridge. Aside from that, I began to notice that some of my clothes and my makeup began to go missing. I knew that Ellen was stealing my clothes because I'd find my clothes in her laundry basket. And the makeup because, well, she asked me to clean her room, and when I did, I found it there. I confronted her about this, and she told me that she had no money and she felt too embarrassed to ask me for things, so she just took them. I told her that I had no issue with her borrowing things as long as she asked me, and if she wanted, I could help her find a job. She agreed to let me help her find a job, but she never went to any of the interviews I helped her get. By the third month of her living with us, I was thoroughly exhausted. She would leave her messes everywhere and demand that I clean it up for her. She treated me like I was her maid, and it irritated me to no extent. She would yell at me if she thought the house was not clean enough. Or if I didn't do it on time, she also made me the nanny of her child. But that wasn't any different from her behavior from the start. I only held my tongue for that long because I was respectful of her suffering. But eventually I hit my limit and I told Chris one night that we needed to talk. Chris, we need to talk. I have a feeling that I already know where this is going. Yeah, well, I love you and I love your family, but Ellen's a nightmare. I wouldn't put it that harshly, but yes. I'm not saying that she needs to leave or anything. She just needs to find a job. I know. She's been here for what, 2 months now? And I haven't seen her make an effort to look for a job at all. And I've tried to help her too. I've set her up for interviews at many places, but she never showed up for them. Yeah, not to mention she's a horrible guest. Like, I love her and all, but she's filthy, and it bothers me because you know how much I love my spaces to be clean. Yes, honey, I try my best to keep things clean for you, but sometimes I'm just so exhausted from work that I can't. I've told Ellen to pick up after herself, but she just got snarky with me. I know. I got dished that same snarkiness when I asked her to do the same thing. Besides, you have nothing to apologize for. We are not supposed to be telling her how to be a good guest. And it does not help that she's so mean. Was she always this way growing up? She wasn't this way with me, at least, but I guess I see why my parents threw her out, as mean as that sounds. It's truly a miracle that your parents put up with her for years. I know I can't do that, Chris. I don't want to throw a single mother onto the streets, but unless she shows me that she's at least making an effort to find her footing, I'm afraid that I will have to kick her out. How about this? We give her another month to find herself a job, and if she doesn't, we'll ask her to leave. Are we bad people for doing that? Absolutely not. I know she came to me because she knew my parents would not help her out in any way. Sometimes some people just need a little tough love. While Chris and I did decide to give Ellen a deadline, we still finally felt guilty about that decision, so we put off having that conversation with her for as long as we could. We bore with all of Ellen's torture because deep down we still felt horrible for her. That was until one day after we came back from a trip to my parents, we walked in to find that Ellen had completely stripped our living room of its previous decor and brought in new and gaudier stuff. She repainted the walls too and even managed to get paint on the couches. I will admit that I lost my temper after that. What did you do? I just spruced up your boring and bland house. You called it beautiful before. Ugh, that was just me buttering you guys up so you'd just let me live with you. You can't just redesign a part of our house without our consent. I live here now, and I need to be comfortable too. You do not live here, Ellen. You're only staying with us temporarily. It'll be another long while before I move out. You have no idea how hard my life's been, and having a space where I feel comfortable will really help me get into a better mental space. Do not use your mental health as an excuse to rip apart my home and change it. You want to have better mental health? Find a job and get yourself your own place. How dare you speak to me like that? Ellen, I try to be as nice as I can towards you, but you've been crossing lines ever since you came here. I haven't said a word, but this is my last straw. Oh, boo-hoo. What are you going to do? Throw me out? How will you be able to live with the fact that you threw a single mother and her child out of your house and onto the streets? I'm not going to do that immediately. I'm giving you exactly 1 month to find yourself a job. You can't do that. Even if I work for a month, that's not going to be enough to get myself a place to rent. Yeah, I don't expect you to do that. What I do expect is for you to get a job, start saving, and start taking care of yourself and your child. You cannot rely on Chris and I to take care of you. You're a monster. Chris, tell her. You can't let your sister struggle this way, right? No, Ellen. Abigail's right. We've been nothing but nice to you, but you've taken advantage of that. You either agree to our terms or we're going to have to kick you out. You are not the man I thought you were. You were supposed to have my back. You were my only family. This is like Mom and Dad all over again. Ellen ran to her room and slammed the door after her. I couldn't believe the fact that she was acting like a teenager. Chris and I spent the next week redoing our living room and practically ignoring Ellen. Ellen never apologized to us, but after about 2 weeks of us giving her our ultimatum, she told us that she got a job. Of course, we were not naive enough to just believe her, so we had her show us her offer letter, and once we confirmed that she was indeed working, we went back to treating her as normally as we could. Over the next 2 months, we took over half of Ellen's earnings and saved it away so she could have enough for a deposit on an apartment. We were still supplying most of the groceries for her and her child, by the way, and her treatment of us remained unchanged. When Ellen finally had enough money saved up, we told her that it was time for her to start searching for a place of her own, because she could not live with us forever. Then came all the excuses that Ellen could muster up. Her trauma was back. She was scared to live alone. She was bad with money. She had no money. Her shaman told her it was an inauspicious time to move out. You name it. And she made it an excuse. When she realized that we were not buying her excuses, she dug her heels in and flat out refused to move out. Chris and I were losing our minds and our patience to deal with her. Every day we would carefully approach her about helping her search for an apartment, and every day she would yell at us for not treating her like family before telling us that she was going to stay with us however long she wanted. Just when Chris and I had reached our breaking point with her and were considering going the legal route to evict her, we got a knock on the door one day. It was early in the morning, and I happened to be in the kitchen while Chris was still taking his shower. Ellen was asleep in her room. I opened the door and was surprised to see 2 cops standing there. Hello, officers. Is everything all right? Hi, Mom. I'm Detective Ryan, and this is my partner, Peter. We've received a tip that Ellen Smith is staying here with a child. Is that correct? Yes, but why are you asking? Ma'am, what is your connection to Miss Smith? She's my husband's sister. When did she show up to your place? About 6 months ago. I'm sorry, but why are you asking me questions about Ellen? Is something wrong? So you have no idea about what's going on in Ellen's life? Did she tell you why she came over to stay with you? Well, my husband lost contact with her when he was 13, and she only got in contact with us 6 months ago. She said that she had an abusive alcoholic husband who she was running away from. She asked my husband and me if we could help her by letting her stay with us, and naturally we agreed because we couldn't let her and her baby starve outside when we had plenty of room in our house. I see. Well, I'm afraid that you've been lied to. What do you mean? Honey, who's at the door? Oh, what are the cops doing here? They've been asking me questions about Ellen, and they just told me that we've been lied to. What do you mean, officers? What my partner means is that the baby that Miss Smith has with her is not hers. What do you mean? You see, your sister has a history of criminal activities. Granted, they are all petty crimes, but they are crimes nonetheless. 3 months ago, she got into a fight with one of her neighbors, and in an attempt to get revenge on her, she stole the neighbor's child when they weren't looking. Oh my God, I swear we had no idea about any of this. We were only helping her because she was family. Don't worry, we believe you. We just need your help finding out where she is right now. And of course, we will need you to come down to the station and give us your statements. Of course, we'll do anything. Ellen's currently sleeping in her room, and if you're worried about the baby, he's completely fine. Do you mind if we step in and make our arrest? Of course. Please come in. The 2 cops walked into our house as quietly as they could. We led them to Ellen's bedroom, and they told us to wait outside. Chris and I stood by each side of the door and peered in to see what was happening. Ellen's eyes flew open as soon as the officers stepped foot into her room. She grabbed the bedside lamp and threw it at one of the officers, injuring him. When the second officer attempted to hold her down, she threw her head back and hit him square in the nose. He hunched over in pain, which allowed her to get herself free. She ran towards the door to move out, but as soon as she stepped foot outside her door, Chris grabbed her by her arms and put her in a light chokehold. She looked at me with so much anger. I was shaking. Thankfully, the officers recovered enough to come to us and put Ellen in her handcuffs. Ellen kept yelling profanities at us for ratting her out and being a crappy family. After the cops took Ellen away, Chris and I were a shaking mess. We couldn't believe what had happened. We knew that Ellen had been problematic, but for her to actually kidnap a child and take shelter in our home? That was unacceptable. So of course we testified against her wherever we could. Not only did she put us at risk by taking shelter in our home, but she was also stupid enough to treat us like crap while doing it. Ellen was charged with kidnapping, resisting arrest, and assaulting a police officer. Chris and I had to attend the trials, and we were called to the stand several times to testify. Each time we did, Ellen would throw us the nastiest glare. The only reason I felt safe was because she was in handcuffs, and there were security guards all around the room. Anyways, Ellen was sentenced to 3 years in prison and was also given community service hours. We also got a restraining order against her. The baby was returned to his mother and peace was restored. Aside from that, Chris and I also decided to move because we felt unsafe knowing that she knew our location. So that's where we're at right now. Chris and I are planning to move states and start fresh somewhere far away from here. Hopefully, we never have to run into Ellen ever again. It's been a good few scary months, but Chris and I are slowly going back to being the way we usually were. Thankfully, we had a lot of support from our family and friends. One thing's for sure, next time, we're not believing any estranged family member. Thank you for listening to my story.